Paul Chek's teacher, let me go that way, right? My teacher's teacher is partners, mentors, works together, friends with the person that you're going to hear today. So basically, you're getting it from the horse's mouth. This is going right to where it all begins. And when it relates to what you're going to learn today from Randy Clark, it has everything to do with posture, neuromuscular strength, and being the strongest version of yourself on that particular level. Now, Randy partnered up with Paul St. John, who was Paul Chek's teacher, and they own a clinic here. Interestingly enough, I mean, that we met each other, but interestingly enough, here in Clearwater, Florida, which was outstanding to find out, where I've referred tons of my clients. When I found out that these guys were so close, I went myself. I've sent my wife, I sent my children when they have issues. I've sent several of our clients, and they do an incredible job of helping realign the posture of our friends, creating more stability within the body of our friends. And they're so good at what they do that Randy, who you're going to meet in a moment, and Paul decided to work together to create a school where they teach trainers how to use massage therapy, personal training, and neuromuscular therapy in order to help their clients really achieve structural balance. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the founder and owner of the Center for Neurosomatic Studies, Randy Clark.
Absolutely. My pleasure. All right. Oh, I like it. I like the beat. It's nice. Nice. All right. All right. This is fun. Okay, this is a great group, man. I love this. I like looking out and seeing this. This is really awesome. The talk I'm going to give today, Danny's going to be pulling that up right here. Good. I will take this. Thanks, sir. You're going to see that I'm not doing it by myself, first of all. Over here, a young gentleman named Frank Mazzella. Thank you, Frank. Yes. Frank is a graduate of our school. He went to the Center for Neurosomatic Studies. He was so good at the school that we hired him for our clinic. He now works at the St. John Clark Pain Treatment Center in Clearwater, Florida, is an excellent, excellent therapist, and we are lucky to have him here with us today. So, a lot of you are very, I mean, if you're here, you know a little bit about structure, right? You know a little bit about your body. You know a little bit about how to lift properly. You've got some life skills if you've been listening to Elliott's videos at all. You're a good, solid group of people who can get their stuff together and really work out, do a good job, keep themselves healthy. Is there anybody here that has some sort of chronic issue, some sort of chronic pain, some sort of issue that they're trying to get rid of? And of those people who have your hands up, does any of you want to volunteer we're looking for a volunteer. We're looking for a volunteer to have Frank actually analyze your posture the way that we do it. All right, we got this is right. I got to get the guy who jumped out of his seat. Come right up here. What is your name? Aaron? Eric. Eric, come on up here for a second. Where are you from, Eric? I'm from California. From California. Welcome, Eric from California. Thank you. Thank you for volunteering. I appreciate that. Basic issue, what's Okay, so you couldn't hear him, but neck pain and tight trapezius stuff. Kind of typical stuff for people who work out, do that sorts of things. So what I'm gonna do, Frank is gonna take Eric off to the side here, start doing an analysis. We're gonna get to that later, but that takes a few minutes, and I'd rather keep the thing moving. So Frank's going to take him off to the side, and we're going to start putting a chart together. So how freaking Yaya, man. Isn't Yaya awesome? Got everybody pumped up. You're all like ready to go. That is really cool. But even with all that energy and music and Elliott being here, which is amazing, I want you all just kind of take an inventory. Take an inventory of what you're doing right now. All right, where's your body? Where are your arms? Where are your legs? How are you sitting in your chair? Just kind of feel where that is, okay? Just kind of feel what you're doing. I see a couple of arms crossed. I see a couple of slouching a little bit, kind of sitting down. A lot of arms on the table, that kind of thing. I'm going to start today. I want you to start there, and then I'll tell you how important that is later. But I want to start today with talking about posture. And you're like, posture? That's a really boring subject. How am I going to sit here and listen to this guy talk about posture? Posture is, to me, not boring at all. It is so important, so incredibly important. But most people, when I talk about posture, they're going to, this is the section where I'm breaking this down into sections. This section is about standing taller and carrying yourself with more confidence, right? This is part of this section. Also, the why is posture important, right? That is what we're talking about. But when I bring up posture to most people, right, to anybody I'm talking to, this is kind of the idea. This is the first thing that pops into their head, is their mom nagging them to sit up straight, right? That there's this, sit up, but don't give me that look. And there's a very negative kind of association. They've all been 13, and their mom said, "Stop slouching," right? And there, so there's this negative association kind of with, "Mom, I'm going to do what I want." Right? That sort of thing. I get this resistance that sometimes pops up when we start talking about this. But I want to show you what advertisers think about posture. This is a billboard that is right outside my office. Like literally, I walked out across the street and took this picture of this billboard. And for those of you who can see it, I know that some of you are further away. It says, one of these men went to New Mail, and they've got these three guys kind of slouching over, and one guy kind of, ha-ha, right, one of these. And then you see what it's for, right? State-of-the-art treatment for erectile dysfunction and low testosterone, right? So what are they saying, right? If you can get your dick hard, you can stand up straight, right? That's what they're saying, right? And they're associating these two things together, right? They're saying, look, you come see us, and you'll be this studly guy who can, please all these women and do it right. But they're doing it strictly through posture, right? They're doing it strictly through posture. Why does everyone know which person they're talking about in this photo that went to New Mail, right? That nobody's choosing one of the other guys. It's obvious. They don't even have to point, right? They know which guy we're talking about because it's the guy who's standing up straight. He's got a big smile on his face. Ha-ha, I just had sex, right? One of those. That's the guy, right? And how do we all know that? Like, how do we all know, like, why do we associate that with confidence, with being a leader, with, being virile, right? How can we associate this posture with that, right? Why does our brain do this? And so if you're going to, let's not focus on the studly guy for a second. Let's look at the other three guys. All kind of different ages, different haircuts, essentially. Got their heads all and their shoulders slumped, and they're kind of like this. When you see that, what do you think? What do you think of those guys? Yeah. Muscular imbalance, that's one thing that you will think. If you put an emotion to one of those guys, what would it be? Depressed, right? Depressed is probably one of the first things that, so wait a second, you're saying my posture will tell you what emotion that I'm having, right? That's basically what you just told me, right? These guys have low energy, they're depressed, right? And so I want to go a little old school on you here. This is a lesson from who we call Professor Brown. There he is. And he says, this is my depressed stance, right? And he's sitting there and he's got all slumped over. Says, when you're depressed, it makes a lot of difference how you stand. So the worst thing you can do is stand up straighter and hold your head up high, because then you're going to start to feel better. It's like if you're going to get any joy out of being depressed, you got to stand like this, right? And so that's, Charles Schultz, he was tapping into something here, right? Like, what was he tapping into with this, like, man, if I stand up straight, I'm going to feel better. I don't want to feel better. I want to feel depressed, so I'm going to stand like this, right? There's definitely an emotional connection, right? And this is from, I'm guessing, the 1960s when he wrote this or something. There is an emotional connection to posture. We know that, right? So we know that there is this mind-body relationship in which the mind can change our body. Everybody cool with that? The mind can change the body, right? Elliott back there is going to give a talk on energetic strength and all that stuff, and how much the mind, he even mentioned it in the introduction here, you might be constipated because you're stressed out, right? Your thoughts and your emotions can have a direct link to the way you stand and the way that you hold yourself. And we all know that because we all instinctively read it, right? We all instinctively know that those three guys were depressed and the last guy wasn't, right? We all know that. So the question then is it possible that our body changes our mind? Does that work the other way? If it works in one direction, can it work in the other direction? And we all kind of like, yeah, I can see that, sure, right? We all kind of get that. But we didn't have any proof. We didn't have any proof. There's this lady. We know who that is, yes? Wonder Woman, yes? All right. You guys are going to join in with me here, ready? We're going to do a little experiment. But I'm going to need you to stand up. Can you do that? Can you stand up for me? All right. Give me your best Wonder Woman. Give me your best. And for those of you who are a little, it can be a Superman. If you feel like I'm not a woman, okay. It can be a Superman, but give me your best Wonder Woman. Now, my colleague over here, Frank, you got us? Frank is going to time 2 minutes. I want you to hold that pose for 2 minutes. That's it, 2 minutes. While you're doing that, I'm going to talk. I'm not just going to stand here and look at you, okay? But for 2 minutes, give me your best Superman or Wonder Woman. I like the Wonder Woman a little better, but, whatever. The stars on the pants, maybe. I don't know. But give me your best Superman or Wonder Woman and hold that. I want you, biggest chest, head held really high. Give me a strong, feet grounded. I am Wonder Woman. Yeah, like that, right? Give me one of those. Like, hear me roar, right? Give me one of those for 2 minutes. And Frank will tell us when our 2 minutes is up. And then I'm going to talk to you while you're doing that. Hopefully, maybe you've heard of TED Talks. Those of you who watch videos, you probably have heard of TED Talks. TED Talks are great talks. They're experts in the fields. They give about 15 to 20-minute talks on a variety of subjects. Really, really cool stuff. Great thing. There's one of them called Your Body Language Shapes Who You Are. It was given by a lady named Amy Cuddy. There she is. She's a Harvard researcher. Keep that head up. Don't give it. Yeah, there you go. Good. Don't be cheating on me. I need you guys holding this thing. All right. She's a Harvard researcher who did research on what you're doing right now. Okay? She did research on this. How are we doing on time, Frank?
20 seconds.
We got 20 more seconds. Okay. You guys hold it for 20 seconds. You can do it. All right. And some of her research reveals that the body language research on body language reveals that we can change other people's perceptions and even our own body chemistry, which is the important part, simply by changing body positions. Time. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Go ahead and sit down. Yes, thank you very much. All right. So, this is a big statement, so I'm going to say it one more time. All right? So and you were standing up and you couldn't take notes or whatever if you want to take notes. Research on body language reveals that we can change other people's perceptions. That's one part, right? Other people's perceptions. And our own body chemistry. What is our body chemistry? What are we really talking about? The big thing that she measured, hormones, right? Is what she was measuring was hormones. 2 hormones in particular. What do you think those hormones might have been? Testosterone. Cortisol and testosterone, right? Those are the 2 biggies that we're looking at, right? So cortisol and testosterone. And she measured these things. And I want to tell you how ingrained this stuff is, right? We're talking about when you say other people's perceptions about who you are and what you're about and all of that, when you start talking about that, you're like, but how do we know? Like, when a baby's born, how does it know who the more confident person is and who the depressed person is and all of that stuff? This is some hardwired shit, man. This is deep, deep in your brain. This is really, really deep. See that posture? You know who that is, by the way? Bolt? Yep, Usain Bolt. Fast guy, yeah? Would you say he's a confident guy? Yeah, you'd probably say he's a confident guy. Maybe a little cocky. Maybe a little cocky. But when you're the fastest guy in the world for like 12 years, you can get a little cocky, right? Right? That's all right. See that posture? See that particular posture right there? This one? Right? This, papa, right? That posture is called pride, right? They actually have labeled that posture. It is called pride. And guess who does that? People who win races, right? Whether it be a marathon or a sprint or whatever. This is something people do. How do they know to do it? Well, you might say, well, they've watched other people, right? They've watched other people do this, other people, and they're mimicking behavior, because we do a lot of mimicking, right? As people, we learn a lot by mimicking, right? So you're like, this is a mimicked behavior. Except, see that? That's a Paralympic athlete who was born blind. Never saw anybody else do this posture. Never saw anything, right? She was born without sight, has been without sight her entire life. And they have studied this, and if a blind person wins a race, they do this. Why? Right? Why do they know to do that? If they win the race, they've never seen anybody, they've never modeled it, how do they know to do this when they do that? Some hardwired shit, man. That is in the deepest part of our brain that knows this, right? It knows it. It says, this is winning. This is pride, man. I am proud about what I just did. All right? That is a prideful posture. And we don't have to learn it. We know it. Right? We know this on a very, very deep level. So I was talking about testosterone, and I was talking about cortisol, right? And when they actually did some studies to look at this, they actually found people who were labeled as powerful and effective. And they started studying these people's minds. And the powerful and effective people were seen as more assertive, they were more confident, and they were more optimistic, right? Not only that, they were risk takers. They were not afraid of risk, right? Those were qualities that they found in these people. When they measured, right? When they measured their testosterone and cortisol, they found exactly what you would think. Higher levels of testosterone, lower levels of cortisol. For those of you who are unfamiliar with cortisol, because testosterone I think most people get, cortisol is a stress-reactive hormone, right? The bigger you react to a stress, the more cortisol your body will produce, right? So these leaders didn't have a high stress reaction. When the stress came, they produced less cortisol. Their reaction was a smaller reaction to the stress, which is what you're looking for in your leader. You don't want a big testosterone leader, but as soon as something goes wrong, they freak out, right? That's not a good leader. Right? You want someone who can handle that stress. And they found that with these people, that was the case. What you just did, right? There were some great Wonder Womans out there too. You guys were very good. I was very impressed, right? What you just did, standing up and doing your Wonder Woman pose, they had people do that, right? 2 minutes, just like I had you do it, 2 minutes, right? They had people do it for 2 minutes, and before they had them do it, they tested their testosterone and cortisol. And after they had them do it, they tested their testosterone and cortisol. Now, actually, right between the tests, they did the 2 minutes, and then they exposed them to a game of Risk, a dice game where they could win something, right? And they measured that as well. The Risk game, the people who had done a power pose. Now, I'm going to tell you because to understand this, you have to understand. They also have what are called low power poses, right? There are high power poses and there are low power poses. And they did low power poses. And those low power poses were things like slouching, crossing your arms like this. One of the really, really big ones was this, like grabbing your neck, like this kind of posture, was considered a low power pose. Anything closed, right? Basically any of the closed stuff were considered low power poses. So they had 3 groups, right? They had a group that they did nothing with, right? They didn't do any posing. They had one that did a low power pose, they had one that did a high power pose. And what they found is when they tested them, first of all, the game of chance, just like you would think, the people who'd done the high power pose, 86% of them took the chance. The low power pose, 60% of them took the chance. Right? There was a big enough gap there to be statistically significant. The other thing they did was the blood test, right? So after the blood test, the high power pose, 2 minutes, 2 minutes of a high power pose, increased testosterone by 20% from baseline. They took their baseline from the beginning, increased it 20%. That's huge. And it took 2 minutes, is all it took. Their cortisol dropped by 15% just by doing this for 2 minutes, right? Pretty cool. But what happened to the low power people? The opposite. The low power people, it wasn't as big of a change, but the low power people, the testosterone dropped by 15%. So 15% less free testosterone, and their cortisol raised by 10%. From baseline, in 2 minutes. Your blood chemistry changes that much in 2 minutes. Right? That is huge. That is a huge, huge thing. Because these powerful and effective people always have those high levels of testosterone and these low levels of cortisol, right? So how do I get there? How do I become one of these powerful and effective people? Well, that was just test one. They did another test, right? They did a couple of other tests. Because she's a Harvard researcher, she's got a lot of money, they can do tests, right? So they're like, what happens if we put them in a high-stress situation? Let's just put them in a high-stress situation. Let's see what happens. So one group, power pose. One group, low power pose, right? And then they sent them in for a job interview. 2 minutes, in for a job interview, right? The actor who was interviewing them, because this was all set up, right? The actor who was interviewing them was trained to give no reaction. Why is that? Because they found that no reaction is much more stressful than someone even yelling at you. That when you're in an interview and you get nothing back, it actually is way more stressful than if someone's even like berating you, like heckling you, right? That it actually is more stressful to get nothing. And so they trained this actor to do this, right? So they could test these people. And then they did blood tests and all of that stuff. But the really cool part is that then they had groups of people like yourself just watch the video of the interview. Just watch the video. That's all they did. Just watch the video. They weren't in the room. They didn't see anything. There was no, right? They watched the video of the person being interviewed and then rated on whether they would hire that person or not hire that person. And right across the board, they had no idea even what the experiment was. And right across the board, all of the people who had power posed were in the positive range of they would like to hire them, and all the people in the low power pose were in the negative range that they would not hire these people. This is Harvard doing this research, right? I'm not making this stuff up. This is amazing stuff. Why? What is it? What is it that made them want to hire those people, right? They couldn't, there was no pheromones, right? Because it was video. There's nothing that they could pick up. So it had to be visual, right? It had to be a visual thing. And when they asked these people why they would hire this person or not hire this person, they used words like presence. They used words like charisma, right? These things that we have these words that aren't really defined. Like, how do you know that Elliott has charisma, right? How do you know? You know he does. We would all agree. Elliott's got charisma, right? Why? What is it? What is charisma, right? It's something that attracts other people to you, right? It's something that makes them want to listen. But where's that coming from, right? There are subtle, very, very subtle things that your body puts off in the way you hold yourself, even the tone of the voice, the way you speak, how crisply you speak. There are little subtle things that give you presence and charisma. Right? And we're now learning what we don't know, whether it was the hormone change from the change, or if there's something more if there's something just the way the person felt about themselves, like an emotional change, right? If you stand there and do this for 2 minutes, it's really hard to feel crappy about yourself. It's really difficult to feel crappy about yourself holding that for 2 minutes. And so you go into the interview going, man, I'm pretty cool, right? They should hire me, man. I am awesome, right? And just having that thought can change the way other people react to you, right? And we might. I didn't put this up there yet, but I was like, when I read this, I was like, we might know somebody like that. So there he is. I went ahead and put him up there because there is that, right? He's got something there's a reason you're here, right? There's a reason you're here is that he's got something. What is that, right? And how do I get it? And that's the other question: is how do I get that, right? And now we're finding there's this is one of the ways you do it, right? And they've talked the end of the talk, and we'll get to more of that in a second. But how do I get from here to there? And what's stopping me from being that person? What's holding me back from being that person, right? And that's a teaser. We're going to get to that here in just a second. One of the other things that was listed on your thing of what we're going to talk about today was, what are the primary sources of lifting injuries? So we're going to get back to the Amy Cuddy stuff. I'm not leaving that entirely. We'll get back to that. But when I lift, how do I hurt myself, right? So we had to figure out what was the primary lifting injury first before we could tell you that. Here's a hint. The source is not from lifting. We'll get that. So what are the primary injuries? That's a bad injury. It's a broken leg. You don't want that. This is never what you want to do. This is bad form right there. That's probably the worst of the lifting injuries you could. If you rip both of your arms off, that is a really bad lifting injury. But it turned out that none of those things were the primary lifting injury. So I had to do some research. What is it that is the most debilitating and the most common and debilitating injury? It was ranking both not only how often it happens, but what is the effect on the person's life, right? What are the two big things that go into that? And the answer is not as sexy as those things. It's this, is that disc herniation is the largest bulging, herniated, ruptured discs, is the biggest injury that lifters have. Whether it be, this is a lumbar one, this is a cervical herniation up here. So, pointed there. Right up in there is the cervical herniation, and there's the lumbar herniation. So I'm sure most of the room is not used to reading MRIs. There's your cerebellum, your brain, right? There's your chin, all that stuff. Vertebra. This gray thing running up and down there, that is your spinal cord. These black things are your discs. And you'll see there the disc here is pushing out and touching the spinal cord. That's bad. That hurts. That person has lots of pain going down their arms, right? Looking at that. This is it just in your lower back. This is your sacrum right here. This is the lumbar spine. There's one right there pressing into the cord. Their symptoms are numb feet, pain in their legs, that kind of stuff from that. And these are the two most common lifting injuries that cause debilitating, lifelong problems. We actually just had a guy yesterday who had a professional volleyball player and got one of these from a car accident and can't play volleyball anymore, right? It really will affect your life. Like, he can't do what his profession was. So I need to talk about, okay, if this is the most common injury, right? If this is the one that most lifters get, how do I stop that from happening? How do I not become this person? Right? That's what we got to figure out. How do I not become this person? And to do that, I have to show you just a couple of things. Wait, before I do that, anybody really queasy? Like they don't like looking at the dead things or anything like that? Because I'll have you close your eyes for a second. Okay, all right. I just wanted to, I didn't want anybody puking in the room and making it smell bad. All right, so what this is an X-ray and a cadaver dissection of the same spine. Okay, so that we can actually see. Here's what it looks like on the X-ray. Here's what is actually going on. Is over here, right? This was a dead person. We didn't do it to a live person. Okay, good. So this, when you have extension in your cervical spine, like that, a little extra curve, you're supposed to have curve in your cervical spine. Everybody get that? There's like normal curves. There's a normal curve in the cervical and the thoracic and the lumbar. Even the sacrum has its own curve. There's normal curves to the spine. This is a little bit of an extension, not much. What you're going to see, here's the brainstem, here's the cerebellum. as it comes down the spinal canal, that cord right there, there is space around it. What you're looking at here is how much space is there in the canal for the cord. And there's leeway in there, right? It can wiggle around. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how your spine's supposed to look. If you lose that curve, this is a reverse curve. Not only has it gone to straight, it's actually gone the other way, right? It's now curving the opposite direction. Relatively common. A lot of people have this. Notice right where the reversal is, how tight the space gets. See how the space starts to narrow right there at that spot. Which is fine. You won't have any symptom until you bulge that disc a little bit. Because as soon as you bulge that disc, it's going to press into that cord. Now you got problems, right? Whereas this person, they could bulge a disc. It's not touching the cord. They won't have any symptom at all. There was a study done up here at USF, University of South Florida, local university. Took 5,000 people over 50, just gave them a lumbar MRI. Symptom-free people, healthy people. Just gave them an MRI of their lumbar spine. 50% had a herniated disc. No symptoms. Herniated disc doesn't hurt. Herniated disc doesn't hurt at all. It's when it touches that cord that it hurts, right? That's where you get your symptom. So it's not just how do I stop the herniation. If I get a herniation, how do I stop it from becoming symptomatic, right? That's a big deal. So you'll see the difference between that and this. And then this one is called a military neck. Where do you think they get that term from? Right? Nice straight spine, right? Military neck, right? That's a military neck. And you'll see it's not as bad as the reversal, but man, it's tight. There's not much space around that cord at all, is there? Now, so the more curve you lose in your spine, the more likely you're going to end up with one of these herniations and one of these problems, right? And that happens in both the cervical spine and the lumbar spine. So, how do I prevent that from happening? How does it happen? Well, we know how it happens in the military, right? That's how it got its name, military neck. So, how do I, as a 20-something person, how do I stop myself from getting to this point? Improve your posture. But some of my worst necks come from dancers, right? Like ballet dancers. Why? Because they've been taught since they were like 6 to get that thing as straight as they could get it, right? They've been taught for a really long time. And you'll see, oh, they have really good posture. It's terrible for their neck. Terrible for their neck. They come in with the biggest problems. And their feet are all screwed up too, because the point shoes, like the ballet dancers, just destroy their feet. Unrelated, sorry. But how do I stop from doing this? Well, what do you think right now might be causing you to lose curve in your neck? What do you think would cause that? Give me an idea of something you do every day that might cause you to lose curve in your neck. Big hand. Texting, driving, wearing the backpack. Backpack, not as much, but texting and driving, yes. Sitting down. Sitting down. Depending on how you sit, right? Yes. If you sit, and this is when I find people with this, right? What my first questions for them are: 1, do you read in bed? Right? Because how do you read in bed? Like this, right? Because you're lying down and your pillow's propping you up, and because that brings chin to chest for a really long time. They can read for hours like that. Do you watch TV when you're lying down? Because same idea, right? Are you on your phone or your laptop constantly? Because where's your laptop? There. Where's your text? Here. Right? And what's the other thing? How many sit-ups do you do? right? That's my other question. It's how many sit-ups do you do? Because what do you do with sit-ups? Right? You're flexing and just tightening the heck out of the front of your neck. If you're doing it wrong, you're supposed to really be pushing it back. Keep it up, right? Right? That's the right way to do it. But I saw this on a professor. He teaches music. And I was like, oh, he's a flamenco guitarist, right? And I'm like, you must be doing this. He's like, no, I really don't. And we got to the sit-up question. And he's like, yeah, I do like about 150 sit-ups every morning. And I went, show me how you do those sit-ups, right? And that precisely was where he was getting his loss of curve from, right? So I've tightened up this neck, and I've been there for years, and I've been doing this, and now my neck is all fucked up, and what am I going to do about this? I guess I'll just wait till it goes bad, and then I'll have my surgery, right? Because you don't know how often I hear that. Like, you would think, oh, that's a stupid statement. I hear it from the freaking orthopedic surgeons that people go into them and go, oh, I got this issue. Like, it's not really bad enough for surgery. Come back in like 2 years, and then we'll do surgery then. Like, what kind of stupid advice is that? Right? Like, no, how about, why don't we save what you got so you don't need the surgery? That doesn't help them out. So there's a muscle in the front of your neck called the longus colli. Longus colli, if I've talked to my classes about this and all this, if some being came down and said, you're no longer allowed to treat the body except for one muscle. You're only allowed to treat one muscle. This would be it. This would be the muscle, is that this causes more issues for cervical herniations and weightlifters than anything I've ever seen before. The problem is it's really hard to get to because it's behind your trachea, right? So the only way to actually get to this muscle is to take your trachea and move it off to the side and come in and get all the way back to your spine. Don't do a lot of it here. You do it wrong and you'll pass out, so don't, right? I say that because we were teaching a seminar once, teaching people how to do this, and one of our students was practicing in the mirror in the bathroom, like this, and she got on her carotid artery, and she passed out, hit her head on the toilet on the way down, and had 10 stitches in her head when she came into class the next morning. Don't do it to yourself, right? It's until you know what you're doing, it is dangerous. But that muscle, as it tightens over time, right? This is why it's 5 years after the whiplash that you herniate your disc. It takes a long time to get to that point. Right? These whiplash people who have these big, major things and spasm up. And then the other real big culprit about this guy, it never hurts here. It always hurts here. Right? Our volunteer came up. What did he say? Neck pain. But where did he point? Back here. Did he say, oh, I have neck pain behind my trachea? No, nobody ever says that, right? Nobody ever says I have neck pain behind my trachea. But this muscle refers its pain to the back of the neck. And when it does so, what's the person going to do? I'm going to go get a massage or a chiropractic adjustment or do something like that. And what's the massage therapist do? Rubs where it hurts, right? But it's tight here. What is it back here? Stretched, right? It's overstretched. So this tightens, this overstretches. I'm going to get a massage. I loosen this up. What happens when I loosen this up? Whoop. Goes back even further. Right? That muscle is a key. Is a key to restoring this. Because it wasn't too much curve that caused the problem, right? It was too little curve that caused the problem. And we see a lot of lifters with this issue. Right? And catch this issue. There's a muscle down here, does something very, very similar called the psoas. You may have heard of the psoas muscle. It's bigger. It's big old thick muscle. right? But you don't ever see it. No one's like, oh, look at that guy's psoas. It's freaking huge, right? No, nobody ever does that, right? But it's a really important muscle for the lumbar spine, for this issue in the lumbar spine, right, in the lower back. Oh, and guess what? If you take care of this stuff, you get more power, stronger, right? Anybody here want to be stronger? Yeah, of course you do. You're here because you want to be stronger, right? So here's the research. It actually shows that this muscle asymmetry affects power and force output, right? Power and force output, that's a big deal. Down here, I highlighted it for you. I'm not going to make you read the whole thing. As a result of muscle asymmetry, jump height was reduced by power asymmetry by 10% or greater, an average of 3.5 inches. You could jump 3.5 inches higher if you were symmetrical, on average. What was funny about this story, the guy who could jump the highest was actually asymmetrical. And when they corrected him, he jumped even higher, right? That this asymmetry in the muscular output creates a power loss, right? And one of the things in this study, they talked about it, and you can see it over here. Sometimes muscle asymmetry comes from bone asymmetry. It's not always in the soft tissue. People have shorter legs, right, where the femur is literally shorter on one side than the other. That happens. You're like, but that's not very common, is it? Let's jump to this. There's how common it is. Incidence of anatomic leg length inequality, which is what we're talking about, structural leg length inequality of the bone. This is a 2005 study showing how much of us are actually perfectly symmetrical. On this graph, 10%. 90% of you have at least 1 millimeter of difference between your two legs, is what that says. So then the question is, how much is really a big deal? Like, okay, I've got 1 millimeter difference. Who gives a crap, right? I don't care. It's not going to make a difference. Sure. So they did this force symmetry output deal. Anything under 5 millimeters doesn't make any significant difference in force output, right? So it's the people who are 6 millimeters or more, these people out in here, that the only way I can correct their muscular asymmetry is to correct their structural asymmetry. Right? So that's a big piece. If no one's ever looked at your structural asymmetry and you're having all those people raise their hand and said, I have this chronic issue, you should look into that. Right? You should look into that because that's often, you can spend your whole life chasing this thing, and if you don't look at this, you're going to lose. You know why? Because gravity always wins. Always. We will all succumb to gravity at some point. Right? The bodies shrink. These things happen. I've not found the person who's lived forever yet. Right? We all will break down. We want to live the best life we can live up until that point. Right? And that's what this is about. This is about getting everything. How do I most efficiently oppose gravity is a question you should ask yourself. Right? And so these lifting injuries, this guy, right, when they come up and I was lifting and I herniated my disc. No, that is not what happened. That's not what happened at all. Your disc was on the verge of herniation and you put load on it. Right? It was going to herniate anyway. It might have just been 2 months later, but you were already there. Right? It's not the lifting. Lifting inherently, when you look at it against other sports, is really safe. Right? There's way less injuries from lifting than there is from football or soccer or baseball or any of these other things, right? It's actually a very safe activity to do when done properly. But if I'm one of these poor souls out here, right? I've got one of these working in my office. She's got a 17 millimeter leg length inequality. Right? She got a 17 millimeter leg length inequality. And she was a professional dancer in New York. She went to Juilliard. She was a high-level modern dancer in New York. and nobody ever did anything about this, and it ended her career. Right? There's a reason she's a therapist now. We eventually found this and corrected it, and she was like, oh my God, it's changed my life so much, and she wanted to learn how to do it, and she learned how to do it. She went through our school and is now a therapist at our clinic, right? Is because that changed her life so much. Someone finding this. It's a big deal, right? I could talk forever about that. I'm not going to. What I do want to do is, how do we figure this out? How do I recognize, not all of you have a problem, but some of you do. I guarantee you, I'm going to just guess 150 people out here, just short guess. Structurally speaking, how many of you have asymmetries and problems? 65, 70, somewhere in there. Have stuff that is enough that we would consider clinically significant and actually causing a problem, or is about to cause a problem. So how do I figure this out? Well, I titled this, I definitely don't want a disc herniation. How do I stop that from happening, right? That's what this is. I don't want that. I don't want that MRI. That's a bad MRI. I don't want to have that one. How do I stop this, right? And to do this, I'm going to actually have you do another quick test for me, all right? I'm going to get everybody involved. For this one, all I want you to do is sit up straight. Just scoot yourself back, no more slouching, get up, sit up really straight in your chair. Feet flat on the floor. I don't want your legs crossed or anything like that. Feet flat on the floor, looking straight ahead. Don't turn your head left and right. Try to as straight ahead as you can be, okay? And all I want you to do is tap your teeth together. Just tap them together a few times. Feel what it feels like to tap your teeth together, right? That is called your occlusal relationship, right? Dentists look at this all the time. When you're at the dentist chair, anybody been at the dentist and they stick that little piece of paper in your mouth and go tap, 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 right? Many of you have experienced this. What they're doing, the paper is reading how your teeth are actually coming together, because believe it or not, that's really, really important. That can drive a lot of things, right? So they're testing your occlusal relationship. So test your occlusal relationship. What should happen is the back teeth hit and they hit at the same time. Some of you, that's not the case. Some of you, one side's hitting before the other, or you'll get a little slide after they hit, or something like that. You have an occlusal issue. We can talk about that later. All I want you to do, keep sitting up straight, keep looking straight ahead. I know it's hard, but do it. All I want you to do is take your right shoulder, raise it about an inch, inch and a half, and then check your occlusal relationship. And then try the left shoulder, just the left shoulder. Bring it up. Anybody feel a shift? Anybody feel something change? Yeah? Okay, so that's just a little shoulder tilt. All I want you to do now is go back to normal. And now take your right shoulder and just keep your head straight, but just rotate it. Bring your body forward a little bit on that side. Oh, but keep your head straight. Don't turn your head. There you go. And then try the other side. Some of you are like, wow, I'm better this way, right? There's reasons for that. Right? But you should start to feel a little bit of a difference. Now, go back to normal. Good. Best you can, sitting in your chair, take your hip, raise it up. Just raise it up a little bit on one side. Don't do anything with your shoulders, just your hips. Check your relationship. Try the other side. Some of you are feeling a change, right? Some feel more than others, and that's okay. But what we're seeing is little differences in body position have an effect on the entire system, right? That all the way up to where my jaw hits is being affected by what my hip's doing, right? This is one piece. You have to remember, this is one piece, right? And a change somewhere makes a change somewhere else. Now, just for fun, remember that tap, tap, tap thing I told you, right? Remember what that was with the paper and all that stuff? What position are you in when your dentist checks that? All right, slouch down. Slouch all the way down. Give me a big slouch. Huge, huge slouch. Slide down. Get into like I'm in the dentist chair position. And then tap your teeth together. Does that feel different? Yeah. It seats that mandible and brings it back, doesn't it? And that's part of the problem. I did that to a room full of 300 dentists, and it blew their mind, right? Because they're testing everybody in a position that they're never in, right? When you're eating, do you ever eat like that, right? No. And you know what actually brings your teeth together more than eating? Is swallowing. You're actually swallowing several times a minute. Saliva, essentially. It's not just saliva. I don't want to get gross on you, but there's like your nose is draining in there and all this stuff. But your own fluids, right? You're actually swallowing those several times a minute. And every time you do, your teeth come together. And if you're balancing it here, that does no good for what you're actually doing all the time, right? So that is the idea of your body actually being one piece, that a distortion in one spot can cause an effect way away. So when someone comes in with TMJ dysfunction into my clinic, and I am measuring their hips, they're like, what the hell are you doing? I'm here for a TMJ dysfunction, right? And I have to explain to them why we're looking at that, right? So I want to show you what we did with, was it Eric? Where's Eric? Where's our volunteer? There he is. Come on up here. Come on up here. Yeah, come on up. Come on. Yeah. Nice shirt, by the way. Is it embarrassing that everybody else wore the same shirt on the same day? Yeah, okay. So Eric has issues. I'm going to come down here. Has issues with trapezius, back of the neck stuff. Okay. And also some hip stuff. So we put Eric's chart up here. Let me take a look at this. Eric from California is your last name, which is awesome. That makes it easy. So what you're seeing here, I'm just getting the view because I've not seen this chart before. Let's see, he's got pain, tightness bilaterally, and more so on the left is what more so on the left side? Okay. Kyphosis, what's this say down here? Thoracic. What's that say, Frank? Tight in the thoracic area. Sleeping on stomach? Yeah, I used to sleep this side. Okay. So, don't sleep on your stomach. Little PSA, don't sleep on your stomach, right? Because what happens when you sleep on your stomach is you can't breathe if your face is straight forward, right? So you spend all night like this. 8 hours of that, not good for you, right? Not good for you. It really screws up your neck over time. So just side note. What else we got here, Frank? I can't read that. Read that to me. Here. Oh, lacrosse ball. Okay, so where do you put the lacrosse ball?
Usually like pretty much everywhere I can.
Just kind of roll it, kind of up and through here and lie into it.
What helps the most is when I put it here against the wall and then push my face, push it into it because that kind of relieves the...
Okay, so you didn't hear what he said probably. He puts the lacrosse ball against the wall, puts it into his neck, and then rotates into it, and that gives him the most relief, right, is that issue. Okay, so let me do a quick, I'm going to jump back up where I can see. This means nothing to you guys, and I understand that. But to us, this makes a really big difference. We take 83 different measurements of a body when they come in. We take 83 different measurements to figure out what is going on with that structure, right? So just looking at this, there's some easy stuff, right, that you can see. This tilt in his head, the cranium here, where it's higher on the left than it is on the right, right? And the shoulders go the same way. These dots right here, these little dots that you see on him, those represent rotation. It means that's the anterior side. So not only is that right shoulder depressed, but it's also forward, like this, right? So there's a rotation going on. Yes? Everybody hear that? He's a shot putter. What? Right? Ugh. Right? Do you shot put with the other hand? No. He only does it with the one hand. I'm guessing the right, looking at this. And so there's a reason for why he's getting into this posture, right? Is he does this thing over and over. He's repetitively doing this thing. It gets interesting down here at the pelvis a little bit. The ASIS, which is the front of the hip, is higher on the right. The back of the hip is higher on the left. How do you do that? That's weird. So his hip, the front, this will be the front, right? The front is superior left, but the back is superior right. What that's called is a flexion disorder. And what's happening is his left side is flexing. Right? It's doing this. So this motion. Does that make sense? We're calling that flexion. It's also called anteversion or anterior tilt. You may have heard other terms. We're calling that flexion right now. And what's happening is just his left side has more of that than his right side. You think that can cause a problem? Yeah, I can. Huh, I wonder why he's having hip issues. Huh, that's weird. So we're looking at this and going, okay, he's got a flexion disorder. He's got this tilt in his shoulder and his head. You'll see the shoulder blades follow the same way. If I look at him from behind, right, basically everything's higher on the left. Everything's lower on the right. He's got this pattern. How do you do that? Well, you do that by getting an S scoliosis. That's the only way your spine can do that. Your spine can't do that any other way, right? So it's mild, but he's going to have a little going off to the right at the bottom. You want to draw that in, maybe, where they can see that, the spine? I don't know if it's already on there. I can't really see. But it's going to go off here, right up here. So it's going to go off to the right down here, and then come back, and then wait a second. What's going to happen between his shoulders and his neck? Even more, right? There's a reason he has neck issues. In order to get the base of your head, which is his occiput, right? In order to get the base of the head crooked and go in the same way, you actually need two curves between your shoulders and the base of your head. So in that little area, his spine goes whoop, whoop, and forms a little S. And I can tell that from these measurements, right? And I can tell what's going on here from this. And where in California are you from? Bay Area. I'm going to give you a number. There's ways to fix this, right? And I know how to fix this. I know how to get rid of these distortions, right? We know whether it's through hands-on techniques, or whether it's through stretching, or whether it's through strengthening. But there's a way to get his structure lined up. And guess what's going to happen when I get his structure lined up? What's he going to do with that shot put? It's going to go further, because power, right? How do you get power? It's force. Anybody know anybody taking physics? Right?
Massage it out.
Force is equal to mass times acceleration, right? Right? And it's the force over time is the power, is the relationship. It's how quickly you can apply a force is what it is. It's how quickly you can apply a force. That's what power is. That's why you can jump higher. It's a quick, right? It's how quickly can I apply that force, right? And a shot put is a quick force, right? You're trying to apply a force very, very, very quickly. He will throw that heavy ball. Is it just called a shot put? The shot, there it is. I'm not the expert here. The shot, right? You put the shot, now I've learned. It's the shot, right? That big old bowling ball that he's got in his hand, right? And it's going to go further when I get this structure lined up. And I know this because I know the science, right? I know the science behind it that says posture, which is what we're talking about today, affects force output. Not only that, how old are you, Eric? 19. He doesn't have a herniated disc yet, does he? No, not yet. Probably not. 30's not that far away. 35, somewhere in that range. Between 30 and 40, he'd go into the doctor and get an MRI done, they go, oh, you've got a herniated disc in your neck. Because it takes time. Discs are really tough. It takes a while for that to happen. But I can tell you he's setting himself up for it, right? And I can stop that. I know how to stop that. And any of you could stop that too. You just got to know how to look for it, right? And how to look for it on yourselves. How do I look for it on myself? So that, right? Get someone who knows how to analyze you and get analyzed, right? Get someone to measure you because, and that's why I'm going to give you a number, is because it's not that hard, especially when you're 19, to fix. Now, looking at, there's a couple of things I want you to look at here, and this is how I know he's going to herniate a disc. I'll follow up to that. See this tilted head here, this tilted occiput? You see, even when he lies down, this is a supine measurement. So this is him lying down over here. So here he is standing. But when he lies down, the shoulders level out, right? Because whatever force is creating that shoulder tilt is now gone. He lies down, his shoulders even up. But you see what happens to the head? Head is what we call a fixation. There's something going on in his occiput that's creating that fixation. So, and that occiput articulates with the very first vertebrae in your spine. So I know there still has to be a tilt in that spine. And in order to do this and hold that, there's got to be tension. And this is the big deal for discs. And if you can leave anything, this, guess what? Discs, what happens before herniation is what they call DDD, or degenerative disc disease. Right? Degenerative disc disease is they start to thin. And they get darker on an MRI, right? If you look on, oh, I don't have it up. On that MRI, when we look at it later, you'll see there's white discs and there's dark discs. And those dark ones are dehydrated. So the question is, how does your disc get hydration? Well, here's the thing. Discs don't have a really good blood supply. It's not through blood that they're getting their stuff. It actually is through a process called imbibition. Great word, imbibition. It comes from imbibe, which is also meaning to drink. Which you might all imbibe later. I think there's an after party on Saturday or something. Maybe some imbibition will take place. But imbibition, when you stand up, and I'm standing up, and we're all sitting up, and we're upright during the day, that pressure on our discs lose fluid every day. And then when we lie down at night, the pressure comes off, and it's like a sponge. Like you squeeze the sponge, and then you open it back up, and when it opens back up, it sucks back in fluid. Right? So you've got these little sponges, right, that are in your spine all the time doing this stuff, right? And his sponges in the upper part of his cervical spine, when he lies down, which is why I have the lying down measurement here, right? When he lies down, those upper sponges aren't getting the pressure off of them. And so that little bit of fluid you lose every day, you're not getting enough back, and you're getting a net negative. And so over time, that will show up as, oh, you have degenerative disc disease. Because they're dehydrated. But they're dehydrated because they're not getting enough fluid at night when he lies down. And especially if he was lying on his face down and doing this. It's probably where that came from. Yes, not doing it anymore. Okay. But 17 years of that is enough time to create a pattern. Right? And now we can see that pattern. Now, the other thing I see, now look at this. See the ASIS and the rotation? There's the rotation. He was actually a little forward on his left hip when he was standing. What happened here? It switched. Both of those switched. How does that happen? I'll tell you. Organs. That actually comes from an organ dysfunction. There's something going on, whether digestively or bladder or something going on stomach. There's something in here that is overactive. And this pressure, all this spine pressure and all of this stuff is starting to show up as an organ dysfunction. And now it might be enough that, I don't know if you're having any issues. You're 19, you might not have shown up yet. You got all kinds of issues. Like digestive issues and stuff. Yeah. He's got digestive issues. Huh, funny. Right? Hey, everybody, I got digestive issues. We can talk about them later. Come meet me. So, I've never met Eric before. He's from California. How did I know he had digestive issues? Because I saw it on his chart, right? We didn't discuss this at all. I saw that on his chart, that he had digestive issues, right? There are ways to catch these things before they become a problem, right? And all of that is about structure and neuromuscular strength, right? Neuromuscular strength is that's the first layer, right? The first layer is this because look at this. See all this crap going on? That's a lot of crap going on for a 19-year-old, right? That's a lot of stuff going on, right? It almost doesn't matter, right? He's here. He wants to get better. He wants to get stronger. If he doesn't address this, I don't care what supplement he takes. Doesn't matter, right? He can have the best thoughts in the world. Gravity is going to kick his butt, right? Gravity is going to win. It never stops. It is relentless. It will win if you are not opposing it properly, right? That's why this is layer number one, right? Eric is why this is number one, is because he's been trying to do the right things, right? He looks healthy, looks like a healthy guy. You've been, yes. But we know different, right? We know different. There's some shit going on. But especially at 19, it might take me 2 sessions with this guy to fix that. And now he's lined up and he's ready. Now he can build real strength, right? And he can build it in such a way that his body will not herniate those discs. And he will end up healthy. And guess what? His digestive system will get better. Right? And we know that. Because you're going to get a talk later on physiological strength, right? Physiological strength. Cool stuff. What you eat. You are what you eat, right? That's a big deal. You are what you eat. Except if you don't absorb it. I don't care what awesome crap I put in my mouth. If my intestines aren't doing what they're supposed to do, right? And they're not absorbing that awesome shit that I put in my mouth, and I just poop it out, that's just some expensive poop, man. That's really, that is some organic, grass-fed poop that you got right there, right? Is what that is. It doesn't do you any good if you don't have the neuromuscular structural strength that we're talking about, right? So I do want to help you, right? Oh, yeah, okay. He's going to go to the Olympics, this guy, 2020. Woo! Excellent. All right. Where's the Olympics in 2020? Tokyo, going to Tokyo. All right. So think about when I get this line straightened, right? And we know that muscular asymmetry affects power. That just went from silver to gold, right? This guy just when he gets the gold medal, little shout out with the gold medal, right? When you're standing up there, just like just give me a little like my shoulders are even or something. Just give me a little sign, right? That when he's standing up there on the podium, you're going to see his shoulders are level, right? We're going to fix this. We're going to get this better. And I've got someone in San Francisco who's awesome who can do that, okay? So we will talk to me after. No, but I know who that is too. But there's another person I'm going to get you in contact with. He's been doing it for like 25 years. He's really awesome. Yeah. So everybody say thank you to Eric. Appreciate your help, man. We'll be talking to you later. All right. Good. Yeah. Go ahead and switch over. Yeah. Thank you. So you can see that when we get to the question of, let's come back. How do I recognize hidden imbalances that destroy posture over time? There is a way to do this, right? There is a way to learn how to do this or to have someone else do it for you. Just find these things out. He's 19. We'll get him worked out. It won't be a big deal, right? You catch these things before. There's a term being thrown around a lot now, kind of, because I'm in the medical field. Preventative medicine, right? This falls right within that preventative field, right? This is the catch it before it becomes the herniated disc, That's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to catch this before it gets there. That was our volunteer, so thank you. So to close here, I don't know timing-wise how we're doing, but okay, fantastic. I want to save about 10 minutes for a couple of questions and answers. But the takeaway, right? This is the take-home. Breathe deeper, think more clearly, feel more relaxed, have more vitality. Right? These are all things we want. These are all things we want. And I want to talk to you real quickly. We talked about athletes, right? We had one up here. I didn't realize Eric was an athlete, but obviously you're all athletes in your own way. This was a research that was done at our school. The use of massage to increase performance of a BJJ athlete by increasing range of motion and decreasing pain. This was a guy that heavyweight. He was in the heavyweight division of BJJ, and was really good. He was obviously a very good athlete. But when he came in, so background, back it up a step. At our school, all right, our school is an 18-month program where we train people how to do what we do, right? At our school, the research is a very big deal. And we actually have our students do actual case study research on 2 people before they graduate, right? This is one of our students. Her name is Alta, who did this work. And she took this guy who was this heavyweight BJJ athlete, came in, very limited range of motion in one hip, and he was a bald guy, shaved his head, right? Couldn't shave his head with his right arm because he couldn't get his arm to his head. Right? This was the injuries he'd had from doing this sport had gotten him to the point that he couldn't do this, and there were certain leg locks that he couldn't do because his hip wouldn't actually go that far. Right? She took 5 weeks, did twice a week treatment on him for 5 weeks while he was training for a tournament, which was actually difficult in a controlled environment. We wouldn't have had him training in for a tournament at this time. But came out of that, won his tournament, was super, super happy. Her research was submitted to the Massage Therapy Foundation's international contest for student research, and we found out last month that she won the gold prize for this. So this was the first time actually in, I think since, 10 years. First time in 9 or 10 years, I think it's 10 years. First time in 10 years that a U.S. school won this competition. So it's New Zealand, Australia, Canada, these people have been winning it for the last 4 or 5 years because their training is often better than ours here in the U.S. But she actually won the gold prize, which got her a bunch of free shit and money, and she's actually presenting at the National Convention in California next year, presenting her work. She's getting published. It's a big deal. And this was done by one of our students at our school. So this is something, you're all athletes. This is just research showing that what I just talked about, right? Aligning those things, getting the body structurally lined up, does increase performance. This was just more research to show this. And so this is something that certainly we're very proud of, and we're very proud of her, and this is something all of our students do, right, is doing this research. So I want you, anybody know who this is? Lindsay Lohan, somebody said it, yep. Lindsay Lohan, we got a big Lohan fan back there. So I want you to just look at this face for a second. All right, look at this face. Attractive, right? I think we'd all agree, and kind of a pleasant, attractive face. Does anybody know who that is? Who is that? That's Lindsay Lohan, right? That's the same person. What the hell happened? Right? Right? What happened to this person? Well, here, I'm going to give you that. The face went from there to there. And this is like 3 years. This is not a huge time difference between these two pictures, right? It's not a big difference. What actually happened to her face? Well, I'm going to make it a little easier. You see what happened? Her facial symmetry is a mess. Why is that? Right? Why is that? What happened to her that her face became crooked? Well, drugs. Yeah, who said that? Drugs. Drugs are bad, man. Stay away from drugs. Drugs. I think the answer, because we all know public drug issues with this lady, I'm actually proposing a different idea. She was in a car accident. She was in a car accident in between here. We see this with our patients all the time. Pain, chronic pain, leads to drug use. You've seen it, right? Football players, oh, I'll just take a little Oxycontin. Oh, that Oxycontin's not working for me. I need to take some more, right? And that leads to finding other, we call it self-medicating, right? I believe she's been self-medicating. Because what happens when your face does this, right? First of all, facial symmetry. We talked about body symmetry and power and all that stuff. There's a lot of research into facial symmetry and attractiveness, right? Why are you attracted to the one on the left but not the one on the right? Right? Facial symmetry is a huge deal in attractiveness. And that's when I said that's deep brain shit with this and all of that, right? They've measured that on infants. Infants, from the time they are born, are attracted to and react differently to faces that are symmetrical than if they're asymmetrical. So this is some deep brain shit, right? It is in there, that you are hardwired to know this. Like, before I had the lines, you're like, yeah, the one on the left is more attractive than the one on the right. Everybody does that, but why? Right? And because your brain is measuring symmetry, is measuring facial symmetry. Now, other than just being pretty, which we all want to be pretty, right? Other than being pretty, why is facial symmetry so important? Because of this. If I open up your head, just take out this piece of your parietal bone right here and just remove that. And then I go ahead and suck your brain out, right? Just go ahead and get rid of that too. Don't need that. And this is what that would look like, right? Inside your head, there's a structure that runs. When Igor brings Frankenstein the brain, right? It's very clear there's a line going down the middle of the brain. There's a left half and a right half of that brain, right? Everybody remember that? I might be too old for that, but yeah. But you understand, there's a left and a right half to the brain. But what separates the left and right half? What separates the left and right half is a structure called the falx cerebri. Big old thick piece of dura that separates the left and right half of your brain, right? And then there's a bottom part of your brain called the cerebellum, right? Top part's the cerebrum, bottom part's the cerebellum. There's a big sheet, right? This thing down here, get my pointer back out. There it is. This bottom sheet right here, called the tentorium cerebelli, separates the cerebrum from the cerebellum. Big, thick, heavy. You know what dura mater means in Latin? Anybody know the translation of dura mater? Which is what this is. Tough mother. Tough mother. The person who first dissected this and named it tough mother for a reason. Right? They couldn't cut through it. It is like this heavy, like I've done cadaver dissections. It will dull your scalpel. Right? Trying to cut through this shit. Like it is tough. Right? Okay, so you've got this tough sheet. Now, you saw Lindsay's face. What happens now if my occiput, which we saw on Eric, his occiput was tilted, right? What happens if my occiput tilts one way, but my frontal bone tilts the other way? Which you see all the time on these people who are in chronic pain. This. What do you think happens to that dural sheet? Twists, right? It twists. Okay, so what? I got a twist dural sheet. What surrounds that dural sheet? Your brain, right? Your brain is what's being twisted. You think that's good for your brain? No, it's not. I'll give you the answer. No, that's bad for your brain, okay? That is bad for your brain when that happens. And not just, right, the cerebrum is your conscious thought and all this stuff, and there's hearing and there's vision and all that stuff is up there. Right across the middle, right where that little hole is, up there, right there, is your sensory and motor strip of your brain. You start pressing on the sensory strip of your brain, something is going to hurt. And guess what? No drug is going to freaking touch it. Because you're going to hurt, it's going to be weird. You're going to be hurt. Like, it hurts in my hip, but I can't find anything wrong with my hip. Because it's that sensory strip that's getting pressed on. Right? And so this symmetry, and we talked about strength, and we talked about looking pretty and all of that stuff. The big game comes here, right? This is the big game. This is the big stuff right here, all right? So there's another picture from the top. It goes everywhere, this dural sheet. The last thing I want to talk about, something called collapsing diaphragmatic posture. This is just leading you into the physiological stuff that you're about to do. Here's a couple models with crappy posture, right? This is really some shitty posture. It's this, right? This is called a collapsing diaphragmatic posture. Why is that important? Why is collapsing diaphragmatic posture such a big freaking deal? Because what sits right here? Well, your diaphragm's here, which is your breathing, which is a big deal, right? These people do not breathe deeply, which Elliott will tell you is a big deal, right? But what's just below there? What's right there, below your ribs? Solar plexus, but the structure is the large intestine. Yes, that is called your transverse colon. Right? Your transverse colon sits right here. And as soon as I put pressure on my transverse colon like this, what do you think happens to my peristaltic movement of the food going through my transverse colon? Yes. And so the old guy goes into the doctor like this and says, "Doc, I'm constipated." Right? What's the doc do? Here's a laxative. That's the answer. When you go to the doctor for constipation, they give you a laxative. Right? Doc doesn't say, "You need to stand the fuck up straight, man." Right? You got to get up. You got to get that pressure off of your transverse colon if you think you're going to digest properly. So posture leads into things like assimilation of material. Right? That's a big deal. Absorption. Remember I said it doesn't matter what you put in your mouth if you don't absorb it? These people aren't absorbing very well. I can tell you that right now. And you're like, "Ha, but I don't stand like that. Whatever. I don't need to know that." Do you ever sit like that? Yeah, you do. I've been watching you. I know you sit like that, right? I know you do. That when you sit like that, those ribs come down like this, and you put pressure directly across that transverse colon. You are not going to digest at all. You're going to digest terribly. And I know this, right? We know this is straightforward stuff. It's pretty easy stuff for us, right? Get the structure together, right? Do your Wonder Woman. Be Wonder Woman, right? I want you to be Wonder Woman or Superman. Yeah, whatever. Understand this. Share this. Get the idea of neuromuscular strength. Of neuromuscular strength being the building block to becoming the strongest version of yourself, right? Like this is the first layer of becoming that, getting to that mastery level where we all want to be, right? We all want to get up to that mastery level. But it's like running with a parachute on if you don't take care of the neuromuscular strength, man. It's just going to be so much harder work. It's going to be, you're going to get so frustrated, and you're going to want to quit, and you're going to, like, get your building blocks there and build on top of them and become that just amazing person that you can become. So get rid of these distortions, right? Get rid of all that crap that's causing you to turn and cause your organs not to work and do all of that stuff. And if you can do that, you can, right? You can become the strongest version of yourself, which is what we're all here to do, right? So thank you for your time. I appreciate you listening.